Um, so firstly, I'd like to thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be invited as the guest speaker, and greetings to all the participants, the aspiring and established mining engineers, and other professionals that we have within the mining value chain as well. And I must say that this is the significance of this conversation, to bring everybody across the globe that is a professional under one roof and have these important discussions. So first and foremost, I'd like to commend yourself and the rest of AfriMine team, honestly, for the good work that you're doing. Mining has always been regarded as a dirty industry for unskilled people, purely because of its labor intensiveness and harsh conditions. So thanks to AfriMine, today we can hear from different perspectives, I'm hoping, and change the narrative and present the other side of mining, which hasn't been told. So as I've already been introduced, I hold a BSc in mining engineering from Wits University. I also have a postgraduate diploma in business administration from Wits Business School in South Africa, which I just completed last month. I've been in the mining industry for over 4 years. It's not much, but it's very significant to me, mainly focused on production and mine planning as well. I'm currently an operational planning specialist for a mining company in Australia. And to answer your questions in terms of how did I get started in the mining industry, I started in a mining graduate development program with Anglo American South Africa. Now with Anglo being a multi-commodity company, we produce everything from coal to platinum. So I was able to gain cross-commodity experience in platinum mining at Amandelbult, for those who are aware, up north of South Africa, and coal mining as well, south of South Africa at Greenside Colliery in Witbank, in a province called Mpumalanga. So I started out in a training. So for 7 months, you do training to be able to sit for your blasting board exam to qualify as a shift boss. So once you graduate as a mining engineer, you need to go through training for you to be statutorily recognized as a production supervisor underground. So I did the training for about 7 years with the Department of Mineral Resources to obtain my certification. And surprisingly, on that day, I was the only female. There were about 8 men. One of them was my friend, Tando Nkulungwane. He's in Witbank right now, mining. And out of those 9 applicants, I was the only person to pass on that day on first attempt. So the board exams can be very difficult in the way that they're set up. They are oral, so you have to answer questions. They test you on law. They test you on regulation and application as well, since you will be responsible for the health and safety of the people underground. So yep, I got my certification after 7 months, and within the following day, I was already underground as a production supervisor. So you can imagine young me, I was 22 years old at that time. So as I was underground, I got confronted with the reality again of being the only female in this section. So I had about 11 amazing and hardworking men reporting to me. There were about 3 roof bolters at that time, 3 shuttle car operators. I had 2 CM operators, 2 electricians, and 1 fitter. So they were all men, and I was the only female leading the section at that time. And I was amazed because they were the best crew at the mine, and in South Africa as well. And that's what led to my highlight in 2019, being able to produce that 1 million tons when we were the first in the country actually to do it in 10 months. So that has been my highlight in terms of my career. There were some challenges, not to say that all was sailing smooth. There were plenty of challenges. I was responsible for the day-to-day running of the section. I was responsible for producing tons, ensuring the health and safety of my crew. planning and supervising as well. And mind you, I was only 22 years old at that time, straight from university. I was the only female, very much inexperienced in terms of leadership skills and mining as a whole. And I think from our mining houses, that's something that we should be focusing on, especially on young graduates when they come into the industry, is to look at how we can hone those leadership skills to set them up for success. And so yeah, that was my journey in terms of how I started. And every shift I had to stand in front of this men, and some of them had kids that were older, same age as me, and I'd have to give them direction. I'd have to resolve conflicts. I'd have to manage their performance. And some of the challenges when I remember that I went through as a young female mining engineer or shift supervisor, firstly is that we worked shift at that time. So we did morning, day, and night shift, alternating weeks. So my body just struggled to adjust every week. And secondly, you had to tolerate men who saw you as a wife instead of a co-worker. And this is something that is deeply embedded in the South African mining culture. And I'm going to say South African because coming to Australia, I've experienced something literally different and the opposite of that. So I had to tolerate that. And I say tolerate because somebody might say, oh, you should have reported when you thought that some of the remarks were more of a sexual harassment orientation. But you need to remember that as a mining graduate, when you come in, you are all focused and you care about your career development and moving up the ranks as well. So you don't want to come across as a troublemaker or a non-team player. So you just learn to go by every day. The third challenge would have been there were no toilets underground. So you had to find a very dark place behind a pillar to help yourself. So you can imagine taking off my PPE, all my lamps, all my rescue pack. It was a mission for a woman underground. The fourth one, the work was very labor intensive. Like literally, I was very thin back then. I was probably like 62. I'm now 72. So I was very thin because going to work was an exercise for me. So even though my role was to supervise, I was not there to do the hard job. But because I was still very young, I felt compelled. My team as well worked really hard, so I was not confident enough to delegate as a leader. And like I said, I lacked some of those leadership skills, and that's a training gap that mining companies need to be focusing on. The fifth challenge that I had was just around lack of role model and mentorship. So there were lack of female professional at the mine at the moment. I remember when I came in, there was a female graduate who I studied with at VETS, but she was ahead of me. Her name was Macheru. And within 3 months of me being there, she left. So at that moment, it was just myself as a young female professional. So there was nobody to draw inspiration or to learn from. And lastly, I was in a long-term relationship as well. We eventually got married during that long time. It's one of the things that as a mining engineer you struggle with, is that you get moved very far away from the cities, and that's where you have to work. So I used to call my marriage sort of like a weekend marriage, because I could only see my husband on weekend, whereas I spent Monday to Friday at work. So those are some of the challenges that I came across. And obviously after 3 years, I was then seconded to Australia by my company, where I gained both surface and underground mining experience as a truck and shovel engineer on surface. And then I eventually moved underground to become a mine planning engineer. So within 2 months of being in that role, I'm now doing the operational planning specialist role, which has been really good. So yeah, that's pretty much my career and how I got into the mining industry. I know it's extensive, but there's so much stuff going on in the mines.
Yeah, that was intensive, and it was information packed. A lot of experiences that you've had there. And one thing stood out for me when you started. You said you just completed your business diploma. In my head, I thought, why is that important? Why do you think a business diploma is important? Would you mind letting us know why?
Yes, that's a good question. I remember finishing. I wanted to continue with my studies. I'm very academic orientated, but I wasn't sure what to do. I thought of a master's. I did my research, asked a lot of people, should I do a master's in mining? And somebody was like, unless you want to be a lecturer. And I was like, maybe that's not a good idea. So it took me 2 years to finally or to eventually decide what I wanted to study. And I'm glad that I waited, because had I decided just getting my degree that I'm going to further my studies, I would have probably studied something that was not what I was supposed to be studying, basically. So after 2 years in the industry, I got to learn more about the industry, the different career paths that are there. I got to learn more about myself, what I really enjoyed as well, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, but most importantly, what are my gaps. And going into mine planning and operational planning specialist, you realize that business acumen is very important. And so that's when I decided to take on the postgraduate diploma in business, because I really wanted to understand what goes on in marketing, what goes on in HR, how do we deal with people. So that has really helped me a lot. How do we deal with transactions, what goes on in commercial space. And so my next plan would be to do my master's from here on. So I really enjoyed the business component of things. I thought I was more of an engineer, but I think the money speaks more sense to me. I'd like to go into commercial strategy. So yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I'm sure you'll find fulfillment in that from what you just explained. And looking at your track record of managing people older than you, people younger than you, I think that's a very strategic degree and it's going to be used from. I'm very confident of it. Another thing you mentioned was that you got into the industry through a graduate degree program. Would you mind reminding us what company offered that graduate degree program?
So it's a graduate development program. Most mining companies, they have to offer a graduate development program, because that's how you get your talent pipeline. So in my experience, most mines in South Africa, they do have a graduate program. You just have to go to their website and search and apply for the graduate program. I was unfortunate in my 4 years at VET in that I didn't have a mining company funding me. I was funded by the government. So when you have a mining company like Anglo American funding you, you are almost guaranteed a job when you are done with your degree or a graduate development program. But in my case, I didn't have that. So I had to apply from scratch, go through the interviews. And I was very fortunate that in my 4th year, around August, I had already signed up for a graduate program with Anglo. So you need to make sure that in your 4th year, you are applying extensively for job placements or graduate programs or internships as well, so that you get signed on in your 4th year and you start working once you are done with school. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you very much for that clarification. So, based on your experience in 2 different countries now, do you think that is the same thing that applies for everybody in different countries?
It is. They use the same system. They use the same system. Yes.
Okay. Great. Great. Thank you very much for that. You also talked about mentorship, right? And before we get to that, I was reading through some statistics earlier, and I learned that within the South African mining industry, only 70% of the labor force is women. And in Canada too, it's about 14%. And in Australia, it's about 16%. And for those that don't know what that means in every 10 persons, you would find less than 2 women in the mining industry. So how did you navigate it? Because I know you talked about it, that it was one of your pain points when you started working in the industry. So how did you navigate that experience practically?
Yes. I won't lie. It's very difficult when you come in and you have no female role model to look up to. But I think for me, it was a matter of understanding that I am probably standing there for the 500 women that are still coming. You know, I'm not there to draw a line and say, oh, there are no women, I'm out as well, you know. But mine was to set my mindset and my mind frame to say, I'm here. Because of me, there's probably 50 more women that might follow who see my story tomorrow, and I will persevere. I won't lie. It was very, very difficult. There were nights when I would have emotional breakdowns. just because of the anxiety of going into work on a Sunday night. You know, I had to start my night shift on Sunday night. You have to leave your family in the city and go back to work. But yeah, just the mindset needs to change for us women. We need to be stronger. So that's what I believe here.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. So knowing that, I'm sure prior to you registering to study mining engineering, you had an idea that there were fewer women in that degree. While you were doing your 4-year degree, you realized that there were fewer women in that course. So why did you choose mining? Please let us know. Why did you choose mining?
Probably to correct you on that one, I was not aware that there were fewer women in mining. So I come from a very rural village, very disadvantaged. So we didn't have cell phones back then. We had no access to the internet. So I look back now and I think my career knowledge or career choices was probably limited at that moment. I didn't know much about mining engineering. I knew there was mining, but I never met somebody who worked in the mines. Probably the only careers I was conversant with was being a doctor or a teacher. The rest was just, I know they're there, but I'm not quite sure what is it that they do. So I always say that I'm a mining engineer by chance. Honestly, so I did math and science in school. I went to a science school. We didn't have commerce or agriculture. And so in my senior year, which is your grade 12, when you have to choose what you're going to do next year at uni, I remember being very confused in terms of what is it that I wanted to do. And it seemed like there were limited career choices at that moment, as I said that I didn't have much knowledge. We didn't have career fairs where you go and you get all that information. And so there was a gap in my career knowledge. And everybody in my class wanted to be a psychologist, a teacher. And I felt like everything is taken. There's nothing special about these career choices. And so I went to my geography teacher. We were very close at that moment. She was like a mother to me, basically, because my mother was working in the city and I was staying with my siblings at that time. So we were very close. And I said to her, she was a geography teacher, and I said to her, I enjoy rocks. I enjoy everything about nature, geological and mineral formations. And surprisingly, it was a math and science school, but I did not enjoy math and science because I always came second or third. There was a boy or two boys who were always ahead of me, so I didn't like them. I was more of a theoretical person. And so my teacher, being a geography teacher, was probably biased in her helping me because we ended up applying for geology at Wits University. So we sent my application, and when I got to Wits, geology was at the top, and they said at the bottom, we're also giving you mining engineering as an option. And I was like, I don't know, but something just said choose mining engineering. And I did. And so I always say I'm a mining engineer by chance. Whatever happened, it happened because God knew best. I believe in the higher power, so probably my path was predetermined by him. So I look back now and it was the best career choice I had ever made. My journey as a mining engineer has been both challenging, but it has been fulfilling. It has been rewarding. If you're a mining engineer, you'd know that with mining, you develop a love-hate relationship. You'd hate it for all the pressure, all the stress, all the long waking hours, but you really love it for the rewards. And I'm not talking about just financial rewards, but it really builds you as a person. Having the opportunity to move across countries with my husband, it's all because of mining and being exposed to leadership at a very young age in my career really accelerated my development. So that's pretty much how I got into mining.
That was very interesting. You know, I was about to ask you, so do you regret it? But you answered the question already.
No, I don't.
Okay, so you just mentioned now that it's also financially rewarding. And I think that brings me to my next question. I'm sure there are people in the audience who would like to know, from your experience, give us an idea of what it is and how much we can expect as a young graduate that is getting to the industry, as a middle management professional and also a senior management professional in the industry. How much should we expect? You can use your experience with us, probably when you were in how it started, and we can move on from there.
That's bad now because people will know how much I take home.
You can give us a range, not.
Yeah. I always say that money is not for everyone, right? So money should not be a motivating factor. It should never. Because in mining, things can get very tough. They can get challenging. They can get very stressful. And the hours are very demanding as well. So when things get tough, I believe that no amount of money will compensate for lack of work-life balance. It will not compensate for poor mental health. So you need to be aware of those elements before choosing mining as a career. So in South Africa, I know the salary between South Africa and Australia are a little bit different. So in South Africa, as a graduate, and I stand to be corrected on this one, as a graduate, you take home about 18,000 rands to 25,000 rands, probably 22,000 rands being your average. And once you are off the graduate program, I think your take home would be around 30 to 35,000. So you'd probably still be at band 6 or associate level. And once you're in management level, the figures would be slightly higher, which I'm not too sure of. And then in Australia, like I said, the salaries are slightly higher this side. So as a graduate, they use Australian dollars this side. So you take home around $5,000 to $7,000. That's an equivalent of like 50,000 to 70,000 rands. And once you're off the graduate program, you stand to take around $8,000 to $12,000. So that's like 80,000 to 120,000 rands. So yeah.
Okay.
So it's pretty steep, but you will have to work for it, like seriously work for it. It gets to a point where the money is just not worth it. It's not, it consumes your life and yeah.
Thank you for that insight. I'm sure many people will be happy to hear that, and so many people will be considering moving to Australia now, or just to make some time.
Hey, the life here is very expensive as well. Okay, so the bread we buy for like 12 rand in South Africa, it's 50 rand this side. So you have to balance those things. So yeah, it's not all rosy.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Thank you for that info. I'm sure many people will be excited about that part. So something you mentioned too earlier, when we were talking about how you transitioned from being a graduate engineer to the operation planning specialist now. So would you mind just giving us, in a stepwise version, how did it go? Is it just from graduate straight to mine planning strategist, or from graduate to what position to what position? Please explain for us. Thank you.
Yes. So when you come into mining, there's a lot of different career paths that you can take. You can go through the production route. So in the production route, you are mainly supervising and managing people and looking after operations. So you'll start as a graduate, work underground as a shift supervisor, production supervisor. Then you'll go up the notch to become a shift boss. So you're just looking your main role, then you sit on surface, but you still go underground for like 3 hours in a shift just to check that the supervisor is doing the correct things. And then you move up to become a mine overseer. In that case, you're probably looking after a couple of sections underground. We had 5 sections. So as a mine overseer, you're probably looking after 2 or 3 sections. Again, you probably don't go underground that much at that level. And just a comment, different mines, different countries will have a different hierarchical system or structural system. From mine overseer, you can become a mine manager. So now you're looking after the whole mine, but you need to remember that there's certification to these things as well. So to get underground, you need a blasting certificate. To become an MO, you need an MO certificate. To become a mine manager, you need a mine manager's ticket. So you need to write those exams, and they can be lengthy and very stressful. So you can move into mine manager role, and you go all the way up to become a GM, so a general manager. So from mine manager, you probably become a general manager. So that's the production route. You can go through the technical route. as a graduate as well. So technical route, you're probably doing the mine planning. So you can start off as a mine planning engineer as a graduate. You're doing ventilation, so you become a ventilation engineer, ensuring that there's adequate airflow underground. You can become a geotechnical engineer, so you're looking after the rock, the stability, the roof support to ensure that the excavations that we drive are safe. You can also become a surveyor if you enjoy that. There's a couple of pathways that you can take as well. Some start at corporate, surprisingly, so you can start up there at the top as well. Not very common in South Africa. I've seen it happen many times in Australia. I was very surprised by that, because in South Africa, we believe you need to get the underground or the mining experience first before you can go and join the big guns. Yeah. Whereas here, everything is done slightly different. We're not really obsessed about hierarchy and all of that. So yeah, I guess those are the different career paths. So you can go from just a graduate to mine planning. You can go from just a graduate into production. So yeah.
All right. Thank you very much for that. I think that was very clear. And I think the part I enjoyed the most is the fact that you can come from corporate straight into being a boss. Crazy. Now I see why you are running after the business degree, because you just want to be corporate.
That's my ticket. I've seen it, and that's my ticket.
Yeah. And just to add to that, I realized some years back that each time I pick up big magazines and I read about the CEOs of mining companies, I realized that very few of them are technical persons. You find a lawyer being the CEO of a very big multinational. You'll find a finance person. I'm like, okay, so what do we do as technical practitioners? How do we navigate it? Well, I think I know we're around. Get your book.
We were talking about that with my friend as well. She's a mining engineer, and she was just alluding to that fact that there's a lot of finance and surprisingly metallurgical as well and electrical engineers in those CEO positions. What is going on, especially with the mining people? And I think our introspection on that was that it's very challenging to be in the mining space. And so mining graduates, they end up quitting along the way. Most of them will run to the banks, they will go to consulting. So we don't finish the journey. And actually it's prolonged for us. So you spend 3 to 5 years underground. Whereas somebody who's done electrical or metallurgy, they'll be a plant supervisor within, I don't know, 2 to 3 years, and they're already out into corporate. And our education as well is structured differently. We don't have the skills that are directly required at corporate. Hence, I'm doing my business degree diploma here. So I'd say the education as well is a little bit disadvantaging for us mining engineers. So yeah.
Oh, thank you for that clarification. I think one thing you've pointed out for us is that for you to be in this industry, you must love what you want to do, because if you don't love it, along the way you'll get a chance to just drop out, which is not what we want for us. And that's why we are making out this conversation, so that you can learn from the experience and you can also prepare your mind ahead of time of what to experience in the field when you get into the field. Okay, so I have a question for you again. And considering all of your experience and all of the ups and downs you've experienced in the industry, what would you do differently if you were to start afresh?
I think the one thing for me, the first one would be not to take myself too seriously. And you can take life seriously, but not yourself. I think I needed someone at that time to tell me that I need to accept that I will fail along the way. I need to open myself to being ridiculed. Because part of not taking yourself seriously is that you welcome judgment, right? You're not afraid to make mistakes. You present yourself, so you put yourself out there. So when we take ourselves too seriously, we fear being too wrong sometimes. We worry about things that may never happen. So we close the doors on ourselves and we limit our possibilities. So yeah, I think that's the first one, is not to take myself too seriously. And the second one would be to fail, but fail fast and fail often. I think that's a good one for me, and it took me time to really realize it. In that, to succeed, we must be open to failure, right? It's the only way we're gonna learn, but you need to do it fast as well and need to do it often as well. So the intention is to ensure that we are learning from our mistakes and we are tweaking them as we go. We reset ourselves and we redo them if necessary, right? So I think that's the most important one, is that fail fast and fail often, because you need it for your development. So yeah, those two things would be the major ones here.
Thank you. That sounds very generic. So I'm going to ask you a very specific one. When you say fail fast, fail very often, can you give us a context of where you failed fast and you failed often within your journey?
Yes. It's no brainer. I think one of the things that I struggled with underground was experience. I had never, when I started underground, my biggest weakness was that I had never been underground before, and now I'm a leader, I'm a supervisor. You are in that level of authority where you're supposed to know more about what you're doing. And I didn't have that. And so the people that I was working with, they had all the experience. And sometimes my shift boss would come, my guys would have supported the roof, everything is nice, we're moving forward, and he would just come in and say, you need to tell your guys to go back and redo the roof because it's not done according to standard. And in that case, you now have to go to the workers and tell them you need to go back. That's something you never want to do as an underground supervisor, to tell them you need to go back, because underground is all about production. So for them, they're chasing production, right? Taking them backwards means that they're losing time that they could have dedicated to production. So I think I probably saw the mistake and just went like, I'm gonna skip this one. I'm not gonna say anything and pray to God that my supervisor doesn't see it as well. But he was very sharp and had like 30 years experience in the mines. So every shift he would come down for 3 hours and we would go through everything. He was like, this is wrong. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I could have told them to redo it as we were doing it, but I was afraid to speak up. I was afraid to look dumb. I was afraid to fail in their eyes. They'll probably say, are you crazy? We've been doing this for 20 years. This is done correctly. Or you don't know your standards or something like that. So I think that would be a practical example of where I'd failed often, just fear of speaking up, fear of delegating. And yeah, so.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was quite precise, and you hit the nail on the head. Thank you very much for that. One thing again I would like to ask you is, now that you've told us a lot about your past, you would like to know more about your present. So you said you are an operation planning specialist currently in Australia in one of the biggest mines in the world, also one of the biggest mining companies in the world. Am I correct?
Yes.
So what does your role entail? What do you do on a daily basis? Is it the same thing as what you just explained, or it's different?
Okay. So as an operational planning specialist, I like to think of it as a step up to mine planning. Here you are more exposed to the whole organizational planning. It's more high level as well. So part of my role is to deploy the most optimal mining strategy to ensure that the mine is meeting its annual business targets. So annually, you will have targets from London, because our head office is in London, from the CEO, Mark Kutufan at the moment. And he would say, I need you guys as a mine to produce 7 million tons this year. So my role is to then go back to the drawing board and say, we need 7 million tons this year. How are we going to do it? So what's the strategy that we're going to use? What threats do we see that are going to affect us from reaching that target? And what are the mitigation strategies? So we come up with improvement projects. So if our processes, I'll give an example, we're running a longwall. If our longwall, for instance, is too old, has like structural failures, or it doesn't perform as optimal as it should be, So one of our strategy will be to try and fix that long wall so that it's probably availability is around 92%, so it's operating for most of the time for us to be able to hit that 7 million tons. So that's part of my role. And the beauty about the mining industry in Australia at the moment is that there's new reserves being discovered. It's not like South Africa is all. And so the mine that I work for, and this is so exciting, it's still in its brownfield state. So it's a brownfield project with production commencing early next year, Jan. Yes, so we are still developing the gate roads at the moment, and we're expecting the longwall to be delivered as well from overseas. And I think the one thing that makes me exciting and just it will build up to my highlight in the mining industry as well is the fact that we will be the first mine in Australia to mine using 2 sets of automated longwall systems. So this means that the longwall will be operated fully from surface in our integrated remote control center. So our core values as a business is around safety, and so this means less people underground exposed to harsh conditions and more improved efficiency for us to be able to meet that 7 million tons that London wants. So yeah, basically this will be my second highlight and a legacy that I'm looking forward to build as well. So yeah.
Thank you very much. For those that do not understand what she's talking about, she just said that she works in a brownfield, meaning that they are just building the mine, so it's not running already. And the interesting part again to talk about is the automation part, which leads me to my next question. So what do you think is the way forward in the industry, and what opportunities are you seeing in the industry? I know you've mentioned automation now. So tell us, what are your thoughts about that? And if somebody is supposed to start a new career and the person is considering Australia and other developed countries, what would you advise?
From what I've seen coming into Australia, Australia is way ahead in terms of automation. And I think that's one of the reasons that really motivated me to move across from South Africa to Australia, because I just envisioned all that knowledge that I will be able to gain and the experience and all the exposure that I'll be exposed to. So the mining industry has evolved, right, from what it used to be. We used to do drill and blast, but now we're doing mechanization. From battery haulers as well, but now we're using electric powered haulers. So there's a lot of changes that have taken place over the years. And what does the future of mining really look like? Some would say that the future of mining is no mining at all at this moment because of all the pollution and all the emissions as well. But I think that mining will not go away. As the population grows across the world, the demands of resources grow, right? It's not a question of if mining is going to be around, but more of how will the change in population be increased to meet the demand as well. So I think for the future of mining is simply smart mining. So we're going to that era where everything would be pretty much automated. So we're looking at coupling big data. We already have some of this data that we've been collecting for many years into our spreadsheet, into our databases. So we have the big data. It's alive, it's available for us, it's ready to be used. But just coupling that with AI, right, to become smart. And what I mean by future smart or smart mines, these are mines that are efficient to operate. They maximize safety. They have minimal impact on the environment as well. So you're pretty much operating from surface. You're removing people from being exposed to those conditions underground. So for somebody who's coming in, and this is what I envision, they would have to have a set of skill set, and their education would have to change as well. When I did mining, I think I spent only 6 months on software learning, and so it was like a computer course that we did. And it's funny because right now all of the work that I do, it's computer based, but during my education, I only did 6 months of that. And so I really struggled when I came to Australia, because I think they expected me to be at a very high level in terms of software, mining software to use. And I had no knowledge of any of those. So there was a gap in my education. So I think there would be a change in our education system. So mining engineers would have to be multidisciplined, right? So in terms of the skills, I'm envisioning them to be more analytical in their thinking and innovative. They would have to have critical analysis approach to problem solving, very high emotional intelligence as well, and just being able to be resilient and flexible, because nowadays you can work from home, you're expected to produce as if you're working from work as well. So they need to be flexible. They need to have knowledge around technology design and programming and all of that. And the roles that I see emerging would be probably around data analysts. We need AI and machine learning specialists. We need your big data specialists as well, software and application developers. It's actually funny at the moment at the mine that I am in that it's very rare to find mining engineers. So mines are also starting to take people from other fields, from other disciplines, and we're just creating, I don't know, this big community of people from, so it's very much diverse, right? We're bringing people with different skill sets because we're trying to set ourselves up for that change that is about to come. And I think one of the guys wrote about it, and he spoke about the 5 disruptions that the mining industry will be able to face in the future. And one of them being the energy disruption. So you look at mines going for hydrogen. So we want to look into tapping into using hydrogen. There's a need to reduce your CO emissions right now. So mining companies have that pressure head on. So we need to look at renewable energy. And the second one is more around social, right, disruption. I think the people or the generation of today is less acceptance of mining. So we need to find ways that we can socially be acceptable within the communities that we operate. So we need to improve the people's lives, right, and the environment in which we are operating in, and that's going to be very critical. And like I said, the third one will be education. So our education system need to be multidisciplinary. We need to look at our curriculum and embed things like your AI into that as well, programming into that. And technology is at the forefront. I've already mentioned that our longwall is pretty much automated. It will be operated from surface. You guys can check out some of the videos online as well. So that's where we're heading. We already have driverless trucks in Australia. I think BHP, 50% of their trucks, their big trucks on surface mines, are pretty much driverless. They don't have people, and some of the trains as well that takes the coal from the mines to the port, they're pretty much driverless as well. They are all operated from the city in Brisbane. So yeah. Oh.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Millicent, while we wait for Tobi. All right,
Oh,
back.
Sorry.
You're back.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was just about to ask. What do you think? Do you think a mine would rather employ an engineer, a mining engineer, with a computer and AI and programming skills, or would they rather employ a data scientist who would come into the mine to learn computer skills? What do you think?
We don't need to confuse the two, right? You still need a mining engineer for their technical expertise, So whether or not they come with the AI programming skills, that will be an additional sort of like top of the cream to probably make you go to that corporate level very fast. But in the mining space, for some of the work that we do, those data analysts, they need the expertise from the mining engineer who understand how a mine operates, who understand the processes underground, who understands the value chain. For instance, in my work right now, I work with modeling. So we have modeling specialists. And me as a mining engineer is to guide them to say, this is the value chain, these are the processes, these are their characteristics and how they operate. They completely have no mining experience, but from the technical experience that I have and the production experience that I have gained from underground, I'm able to assist them into modeling some of the processes that we have, because we are moving away from this deterministic approach in terms of our tons forecast. So we are moving into more probabilistic. So we're using statistical modeling. So we're trying to fancy things up, but that's where we're moving to. So, but like I said, don't confuse the role of a mining engineer. You still need that. It is still very critical, but it will be very good to also equip them with some of the skills that will help them to integrate into this technology space that we are heading into. So.
Thank you very much. Let me just give you a minute to take your breath and probably drink some water. And welcome everybody that has joined us over the course of this event. We have here Millicent, who is currently based in Australia and works with Anglo America in Australia. And she's been talking to us about how much we can get into the industry, how we can navigate the industry, especially if you're a lady, and also as a man. There are some very valuable lessons that we've picked up from our experience. Another thing she just talked about was how the industry in the developed world is transitioning from just the technical way of doing things to a computing way of doing things. And I think for those that want to pursue a career and want to pursue a career in these kind of countries should consider looking forward to having and equipping themselves with those skills. So thank you again to everybody that has joined us. And as we round up, we have just about 2 or 3 more questions. And the one that is coming last is going to be very interesting. So stay tuned as you glean from our experience. So we have so many non-technical persons joining us in this event, and I'm sure they want to go home with something, one information, because some of them want to pursue a career in the industry, but not in technical roles. Some of them are lawyers, some of them are doctors, some of them are teachers, some of them are HR practitioners. So what opportunities are available for them in your own experience? And if they are still not there yet, how can they begin?
Okay. So mining for me sort of like caters for everyone. We still need paramedics, we still need lawyers, we still need doctors, we still need psychologists, we need first aiders. It's sort of like cross multidisciplinary field that people can get into. So the easiest way to get into it, I don't want people who don't have the technical experience to feel like they need to get the technical experience, especially if they don't want to become mining engineers. So whether they go on the company's website and just apply, for those who feel like they need the technical, but they don't want to go through the whole 4-year degree, there are short courses that you can do. For instance, a mine planning short course, which takes about 12 months. You can also do that. There's other things. You can do project management. That's one of the easiest way to get into the mining space as well. So the mine at the moment, or nowadays, they are moving into using contractors. So you find that at the mine, there's like 25% permanent employees and the rest will just be contractors. So you need to think out of the box to say, what are the services that I can support to the mines. And there's a lot of contractors that we have and suppliers, be it cleaning contractors, just maintenance contractors as well coming in. So there's a lot of ways in which you can come in. So the mining value chain is very broad, absolutely very broad. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification. And I'm sure the opinion and the thought that she has laid out is very practical and very useful. Okay, we've got some questions popping, and while those questions are being compiled, I would like to ask this final question from my side. And
Yeah.
some people that are here wants to transition to being in Australia just like you. And I'm sure you were sometimes like this when you're about leaving South Africa to Australia. Tell us about your experience. How did it go? How can we get started if we want to do that?
Okay. I'll start with how people can relocate from their respective countries to Australia. There's multiple ways you can do it. So I remember for me, my first Australian job, I had actually applied from LinkedIn. So I saw the ad on LinkedIn. They wanted a mining engineer. It was Peabody mining company at that moment. And I applied. They came to South Africa to do the interviews. Sometimes they do them online. And yeah, I got the job. They paid for everything, my visa, my flights, my family relocation, because that is also included in your package. And then, but because Anglo at that moment already expressed interest to send me to Australia, I sort of like took the second option to go with my company. So you can have an internal relocation as well. So if you have a mining company that is based in your country and is also based in Australia, you can ask for a transfer. They will pay for everything. So the nice thing about when you get the job first is that the mines, they actually pay for everything. You don't have to pay for anything. So they sponsor your visa and your flights. It takes about 3 months to get an Australian visa. So the requirements, you need a visa to come to Australia, but to get a visa, you need to get a passport, obviously. So get the passport first and then apply for a visa. At the moment, Australia is on lockdown since March 2020 because of the whole COVID pandemic. So they're not accepting, or the borders are not really open. It has to be under special conditions that they open for you. A typical working visa would cost you around 70,000 rands if you want to apply by yourself. So there is an option to actually apply for a visa by yourself. So you don't have to find a job through a mining company, but you can apply for a visa by yourself and then apply for a mining company. So the nice thing about that is that when you apply for a company that's already in Australia and they see that you have a visa, then they know they don't have to pay that 70,000. You already have the proper working documents. So they'll just take you. So I hear a lot of people saying I get rejections, or I'm told that I don't have the right working documents, which refers to a visa. So in most cases, you need to get that one first yourself and then apply. So it's very few cases where you get the job first and then the company pays for everything. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it's very rare and few in those cases. So when you apply for yourself, you can just go to the immigration website or Australian immigration website and apply from there. You can also apply through an agent. So there's an agent called Bravo Migration and Fragomen. There's many of them, so you can apply through an agency. The nice thing about that is they will cater it for everything. They will tell you what documents are required, so you don't have to run around. They will actually help you with applying for the visa. So what do you need to then apply for a visa? So you need an English competency test. So this one is provided by IELTS. There's another one as well, I just forget. But but you need an English competency test, because what Australia wants is they want to ascertain and determine if you can actually speak English and speak it fluently. So you will be assessed on 4 components. So that is writing, reading, comprehension, and I forgot the third one. So you can go anywhere in South Africa or in your country and write the IELTS test. It's called IELTS, IELTS. You need if you are a graduate, you need 2 years experience. So no, if you're a graduate, you need 2 years experience in your country before you can come to Australia. Even if you're not a graduate, you still need that 2 years experience. You need a police clearance as well. You need a medical certificate. They want to know that you're fit. And then in some cases, you might need a skills assessment done. So you need to go to Engineers Australia. If you're an engineer, it's more like EXA. If you know how EXA works, like EXA caters for engineers. So you find the body that caters for your field. So in Australia, it will be Engineers Australia. I believe it will be a different body for like doctors and teachers. So for engineers, you need to write to the Engineers Australia. You can go on their website and see what documents that they need. So what they do is they will assess your degree, they will assess your experience to see if it is recognized in Australia. So is your qualification that you got from VETS, that you got from UJ, or that you got from any other university actually recognized in Australia? And once you have all of those documents, you can then go to the Australian website and lodge a visa application. So there are different types of visas as well. We have a graduate visa. I've already said that you need to have graduated within 2 years to apply for graduate visa. So if you have graduated and 2 years has passed, you're still in your country, then you apply for a temporary work visa. It's called TSS. And it's normally for 4 years. It's the one that I'm on right now. So for TSS, you need two years working experience. You need a degree as well. And then you can apply for that visa. And like I said, in some instances, the company apply for you, which was the case for me. They applied for everything on my behalf. So I hope I was very clear. It's a very long list. If anybody needs the list, I can send it to them. I've got the whole points jotted down because I've been helping some of the people who had the same questions as well. So yeah.
Thank you very much. That's a blank check. So for those that want to relocate to Australia, you can reach out to anybody in the chat box and they would send you an email that you can send your request to, and we'll compile all of this information and forward to you. So we have some questions. Yeah. And the first one is, how are the employment opportunities post-graduation? How are the employment opportunities post-graduation during your time? So I guess the person is trying to find out, was there a lot of opportunities for you? And
I think when I got in, it was still okay when I was doing my first year, second year, but towards the end of my 4th year, you could see that things are getting pretty difficult, like job opportunities are becoming scarce. And I saw that because some of the mining companies that were funding students, they actually send them letters to say, we won't be able to take you once you're done with we'll pay for your full degree, but we're not taking you because we don't have space for you. So me being with my fees being paid by the government, obviously I didn't stand a chance, and I started to panic that I might not have a job. And I remember in my 4th year, I started applying for teaching posts. There's a body that it's called Teach SA. They take engineers and they train them to become teachers. So I applied for teaching posts. I applied for everything. I just wanted to see myself working. So I think, so by judging by that, I would say it was getting pretty dire when I got to my 4th year. And because I applied for everything, I applied for Nedbank as well. And I remember I actually got an offer from Nedbank. So you can actually apply for banks as an engineer. You can apply for consulting companies as well. So I was very fortunate in that I got an offer from both Nedbank and Anglo American at that moment. And being a mining engineer, I then opted to go with Anglo American. So yeah, the opportunities are getting pretty dire, pretty minimal in South Africa. When you come to Australia, it's a different story, like a whole different story. So at this moment, Australia is anticipating that we'll probably have not more than 50 mining engineers graduating in the next year. They are looking at phasing mining engineering out in some of the universities because they get as minimum as like 4 students for mining engineering. And most of the mining engineers, and I say this because of experience, most of the mining engineers in the mines are not from Australia. They are from Brazil, they are from South Africa, mostly from Zimbabwe, they're from Nigeria, they're from India, they're from all over the country, from Japan, from China, so they're all from all over the globe. So this is alluding to the fact that there is a gap in Australia, there's a demand in Australia, and mining companies are struggling. We are struggling to fill that gap. At the moment, I'm doing 2 roles because we can't find a mining engineer to replace me since I've moved from mine planning to operational planning. Wow. So I had to take on that role as well because we've been advertising for the past 3 months for a mining engineer. And I remember the first week, out of 25 applicants that we got, 23 were from outside of Australia. Only 2 were from within Australia. So it's pretty dire. If you have the means and the ability, please apply for jobs in Australia. Even if you don't have the visa, even if you don't have your degree yet, start applying for those jobs at the moment. Because it's only going to increase and it's going to get worse and worse. Yep.
Yes, thank you very much for that explanation. And yeah, I'm sure you pretty answered some of the other questions that are coming up. So this one is very tricky, and I want us to have your opinion. It said, yeah, we are navigating and fighting global climate change, and many countries are starting to reduce fossil fuel consumption. What do you reckon about the future of mining industry and mining engineering itself?
Yes. It's no doubt that we are getting challenges from your green people who want the whole world to go green. And as a mining company, we do support those initiatives actually. Because we do accept that mining does have a negative impact to the environment, right? To the world as a whole as well. And we're looking at ways that we can do things better. So I think my question first would be, mining is not going anywhere. We're gonna stay, because for you to get all those green energy and all of that, you still need mining to supply you with that hard coking coal to be able to build your steel, so that you can build your turbines, right, to create that wind energy. So mining is not going anywhere because of the economical impact that it has, and it's very much positive. You need mining to be able to build your schools, to be able to build your roads. You need steel from mining. You need steel to be able to build your, things that your cars, right? We use platinum in catalytic converters as well. So you still need mining from that to make jewelry, to make laboratory equipment, to make some of the dental instruments as well, to make your cell phone. Your whole cell phone is mining. So mining is not going anywhere. But like I said, we do acknowledge the negative impact, and that's why we are looking at reimagining the way we do things, so that we do them differently. And one of them is reducing our carbon emissions by using hydrogen. So yeah.
Thank you very much for that. I was going through an article sometimes back, and the author said that about 90% of the material used in a solar panel that's supposed to give us renewable energy is minerals. So without mining, there is no renewable. Without mining, there is no green.
No.
The next question is, it's a student wanting a quick technique on how you managed your physical, emotional, and mental well-being when you were a student.
This one is gonna be a bit personal, right? We are all built differently. And secondly, we all have different motivators, right? I came from a very disadvantaged background, as I've already said. And for me, my motivation was to actually succeed so that my family will not know poverty anymore. That was my goal. So when I got to university, I remember I didn't know how to start a laptop. I'd never seen a computer before. And you can imagine as a first year student, there's this, you are in the midst of different people from different backgrounds. You know, some are rich, some are coming from Model C schools, and some can use computers. And you can't even say, how do I start the computer, right? So it starts from there. And that really took a toll on me in my first year. I think I remember my average was around 51. I nearly failed in first year. I struggled a lot, but I had my why. I had my purpose. I understood what I needed to do to get myself to my end goal. And that literally became my fuel. It drove me. Yes, there were times when I would melt down, but I was raised to be very strong in that you had nobody to talk to when growing up. Everything you literally had to take it on your shoulders and continue with life. So that's pretty much my upbringing. And like I said, people will be different. And my why was basically my motivation, which was to get away from the poverty that I grew up in and build a better future for my family, for my life as well, and for my kids one day, should I have one. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And here's the last one for today before we go. Just before the last question, please make sure you fill the feedback form if you want to, and give us your opinion on how to improve our next sessions. And we'll gladly appreciate it. Thank you very much. And please use the chat room to ask your questions too, if you want to ask any more questions. Please, how does a geologist bridge his or her knowledge gap at being able to make a quick transition into the mining industry?
If they're still at uni, because I remember we had geologists coming in and doing some of the mining classes with us. So I think you can take like electives and do some of the mining courses so that you have that balance between geology and mining. Other than that, if you are already a fully qualified geologist, you might have to look at a master's certificate or a master's degree. So basically maybe do something in geotechnical. So you can do a master's in geotechnical. You can do a diploma for 2 years in ventilation. So you're pretty much looking at going through the technical route if you're already a geologist. So you can do 2 years on geotechnical and get your master's and become a geotech engineer. So you'd be in the mining space. Or you can do a ventilation diploma, which is 2 years as well, and you become a ventilation engineer. So it's pretty much easy to transition. But one thing I've seen in Australia is that as long as you've been to university, you have the degree, it doesn't matter what background is. Sometimes you find them in mining, and because we just don't have people. So if you can think, if you can apply yourself, you've got the job. So slightly different thinking this side.
Thank you very much for that. And here's the last one for today. You sound very professional. Work. Okay, so what exciting and fun thing do you do apart from work that is non-work related? Maybe some engineers or some non-engineers can learn from you and do that, because you mentioned don't take life too seriously earlier.
Yeah, it's funny enough. I'm trying to apply that one now. But for me, I'm a very simple person, very introverted as well. So I like being indoors and reading, and watching Netflix is my favorite time. I also play a bit of tennis with my husband on weekends. So another thing about being in Australia is that you don't have family, you don't have friends. And for us, it's also different in that I think we are probably the second Black family in the town. Wow. So yeah, literally, like when I came in Australia, because my husband joined me this year, I was the only Black woman in town. basically, and then it's worse at the mine. You're just the only Black person there. So those are some of the challenges that people might face when they come this side. But I'm very thick in my skin as well, so I pretty much brush things off, and I try not to think about them too much, so it doesn't really affect me that much. I try to find balance between work hours. So I go to the gym, but it's a very struggle. As I said, mining is very demanding. I mean, I start my job at around 6 a.m. in the morning, and I'll probably come back around 5 and 6. So I don't get much time to go to the gym. I'd have to wake up around 4 to be able to make it. And yeah, catching up with family in South Africa. I've been away from home for over 2 years now. And so because of COVID, I can't travel back home. And so I just spend weekend like video calling them because I've missed so much of their lives. So weekends are just for calling my family. I also enjoy studying. As I've said, I've just completed my PDBA and I'll be going for my master's. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
All right. Thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate you, and thank you for all of the tips and hacks that you've taught us today. And we are sure that so many people would pick them up and practice them, and would also reach out for your assistance, guidance, and help over time. Please extend our greetings to your lovely husband who has supported you across this journey, and even tonight on your side. Thank you. And
yeah, he's probably listening.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Good luck and goodbye to everyone. Thank you.
Yes. And for every other person that has joined, thank you. You have the opportunity to volunteer with us and be a part of this organization. You would also get to hear about more of it over time, more of this kind of event over time. And I'm sure in the chat box, there will be a post about how to volunteer with us and how to be a part of this team, incredible team that I call them the incredible team because they just make everything happen so smoothly without you bothering about how to navigate it. So thank you. We look forward to having people join us and be a member of the organization. All right. And on that note, we would like to round up today's session. And please have a lovely evening, have a lovely morning, have a lovely night and afternoon too. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.